If you're a fan of humanity standing tall against impossible odds, of loyalty, monsters, and legends that refuse to die, then you're in the right place. Drop a like, leave a comment sharing what you would have done if the galaxy feared your best friend, and subscribe for more stories that prove why humanity always fights back. Now let's begin. The council chamber glowed with sterile light, the kind that made everything, even fear, look clean. Captain Elias Ward stood alone at the center of the circular hall, his boots clicking on polished obsidian tiles older than human civilization itself. Around him, tiers of alien delegates shimmered in their containment fields, hundreds of species, thousands of eyes, all fixed on one man who didn't belong. Hollow displays hovered above the floor, replaying a loop of carnage, a creature the size of a gunship tearing through an armada. Fangs like starship hulls. Scales darker than deep space. Each strike, each roar played in dreadful silence. The apex predator. The galaxy's nightmare. And according to the Council, humanity's secret weapon. Chancellor Vrixinel's voice clicked like a blade against stone. Captain Ward of Sol, she said, mandibles twitching in disgust. You stand accused of concealing a galactic threat. Explain why this thing, the hologram replayed the creature ripping a destroyer in half, fights under your banner. Ward's throat felt like gravel. It doesn't fight for us, he said. It fights with us. A wave of uneasy chittering rolled through the chamber. The translation filters spat out snippets in a dozen tongues. Control, dominion, biological manipulation. They thought humanity had tamed it, that Earth had found a way to leash death itself. General Renock, all horn and crimson armor, slammed a clawed fist on the console before him. You expect us to believe this predator, the destroyer of the Orion fleets, chose to defend your planet? His voice boomed across the hall. No creature like that serves without fear or command. Ward's gaze didn't waver. You're right, General. It doesn't serve. It remembers. Silence. Just the hum of translation circuits. He could feel their eyes tearing through him, weighing every breath. The Council had no love for humanity, the youngest member species, allowed into their galactic fraternity only after proving they could survive what others could not. But even now, decades later, humanity's seat at the table still smelled like suspicion. Ward gestured to the frozen hollow of the monster mid-slash, framed by fire. You call it a beast, he said quietly. But you never asked what it was fighting. He tapped a command into the podium. The footage shifted. The predator wasn't attacking civilian vessels. It was defending. Shielding a crippled human transport from a swarm of biomechanical horrors, the Scourge. Ward let the image speak for itself before turning back to the Council. That ship held 300 children being evacuated from Europa Colony. It didn't touch a single one. It died before it let them die. Vrixinel's antennae trembled. Died? Then how do you explain these new readings from the Sol sector? The chamber lights dimmed as a second projection appeared, a pulsing signal near Earth's orbit. The same energy signature as the predator. Ward's pulse spiked. That was impossible. The last time he'd seen Kaeldar, if you could even call the creature by a name, it had vanished into the void after the Orion Wars, presumed dead. Humanity had built monuments in its honor. Some whispered that Ward himself had once stood beside it in battle. Now its signal was back. Vrixinel's voice grew colder. We will not risk another war. The Council authorizes an immediate inspection of Earth's military installations. If this creature has returned, it must be contained, or destroyed. The delegates roared their approval one by one, their voices layered like thunder. Ward wanted to argue. To shout. But every word he'd ever used in defense of humanity had already been thrown back at him. Instead, he forced his voice into calm restraint. You're making a mistake. If it came back, it's not to attack us. Then why? Renock sneered. Why would the most lethal organism in recorded history return to the very species it once terrorized? Ward hesitated, not because he didn't know but because he did. The memory flashed before his eyes, blood and ash, a battlefield 30 years gone. The wounded beast towering over him, then lowering its head in something like gratitude. The sound of its heartbeat echoing through his armor as he whispered, "We protect our own." Back then he had thought the creature was just surviving. But now, because we saved it once, he said finally. And it doesn't forget. The Council erupted. Shouts. Protests. Accusations of heresy and genetic manipulation. The chamber's atmosphere field flickered as energy surged with emotion. Vrixinel rose, mandibles flaring open like blades. Then your entire species stands accused of consorting with a galactic weapon. If what you say is true, Captain Ward, Then humanity may no longer be fit to remain among civilized worlds. The words hit harder than any bullet. Ward clenched his fists behind his back, knuckles white. If protecting life disqualifies us, he said, voice low but steady, then maybe civilized worlds have forgotten what that word means. For a brief second the hall went still. No hum, no movement, only the steady pulse of Ward's heart in his ears. Then the Chancellor gave the command. Deploy observation fleets to Seoul. If this predator appears, it is to be neutralized immediately. The lights shifted from blue to crimson, the signal of an emergency mobilization. Ward's hollow console blinked with encrypted messages from Earth Command. One stood out, marked with the black seal of the Terran Defense Directorate. He opened it discreetly. The words appeared in plain text. Alert, containment breach. Subject Omega, 1. Missing from deep orbit hold. Trajectory, unknown. Possible earthward vector. Ward's mouth went dry. The chamber's noise faded into nothing. Kaeldar was free. He looked up toward the swirling stars beyond the chamber's dome, the same stars that once burned over a battlefield where predator and man fought side by side. The same stars that now hid a shadow moving silently back toward humanity's home. Vrixenel's voice cut through his thoughts. Do you have anything further to add before this council proceeds with sanction orders against your world? Ward raised his head, and though the light caught the silver in his hair, his eyes burned with the same fire as they had decades ago. Just one thing, he said. If you're afraid of what's coming, you should be. But not because it's hunting you. Because it's protecting us. A ripple of unease swept through the council, the kind that no translation software could flatten into logic. The chamber lights dimmed again as Ward's comlink vibrated, showing a final encrypted pulse from Earth. An image flickered, a shadow entering orbit, wings spread against the sun. Every delegate leaned forward, terrified. Ward smiled, though no one could see it. He's back, he whispered. The feed cut to black. And somewhere in the silence between stars, something vast and alive roared, not in anger but in warning. The council didn't yet understand. The galaxy's deadliest predator wasn't humanity's enemy. It was their guardian. The air on Delta 47 had tasted like rust and smoke. Elias Ward remembered it as though he were still there, crouched in a crater, rifle shaking in his hands, the ground trembling with each distant explosion. 30 years ago, before he was a captain, before the council or the speeches, he had been just another soldier trying not to die. His squad was pinned in the ruins of an old mining colony. Communications were gone, orbital support silent. The alien warlords who ruled this sector hunted survivors for sport. The night sky burned red from their bombardments, and every crater glowed with molten glass. Private Rios coughed beside him, blood streaking his chin. Lieutenant, we're out of ammo. Ward checked his rifle anyway. Empty. He could still hear the alien howls, deep, guttural and wrong, echoing across the plains. They were close. Too close. He glanced at the wounded around him, barely a dozen left from an original platoon of 50. Half-conscious men clutching charred limbs, whispering to ghosts. They wouldn't last another assault. Then the ground shook. Not from artillery this time, but from something moving beneath it. Dust lifted in trembling rings as the cracked soil began to rise. Ward turned, scanning through his visor, but the sensors failed, static and white noise. Whatever it was alive, enormous, and directly under them. The surface split open like a wound. A shape burst from the earth, black, scaled, glistening with liquid fire. Two eyes burned like suns through smoke. The apex predator. Kaeldar. Every soldier froze, instincts screaming to run, to shoot, to do anything but look. It didn't attack. Instead, it collapsed, one titanic limb crashing into the ground, crushing a burned-out vehicle. Its body was shredded by plasma wounds, its chest heaving like a dying engine. The creature let out a sound halfway between a growl and a breath, not rage but pain. Ward raised his rifle anyway. The others followed, trembling. Hold, he said, though his voice broke halfway through the word. Private Rios hissed, Sir, it'll kill us all. Hold. For a moment time slowed. The predator looked at him, through him, its gaze steady, intelligent. Then its head dropped into the dirt, breath shallow, blood leaking from gashes that steamed against the cold. It wasn't hunting. It was running. Ward lowered his rifle. Medic. Now. What? You're joking, right? Rios whispered. Give me a nanite patch. That's an order. The men hesitated, but fear of Ward outweighed fear of the beast. A trembling hand passed him the kit. Ward approached, each step heavier than the last, until he stood beside a creature big enough to swallow a dropship. The stench of scorched scales filled the air. He placed the nanite gel over a gaping wound along its shoulder. The swarm hissed to life, spreading through the lacerations like liquid silver. The predator flinched but didn't retaliate. Its breath rattled like thunder. Ward whispered almost to himself, "Easy now, you're all right." The soldiers stared in disbelief. When the alien hunters arrived at dawn, the predator moved again, not to flee but to fight. They came in packs, sleek and armored, with harpoon rifles designed to pierce even Kael'thar's hide. The first volley struck, but the beast lunged through it. No roar, no hesitation, just motion. It tore through them with surgical precision, claws slicing through metal and flesh alike. Ward's men joined in, firing what rounds they had left. They weren't protecting it. They were fighting beside it without realizing. When the battle ended, only smoke and silence remained. The field was littered with burning armor and alien corpses. The predator stood motionless amid the carnage, bleeding from new wounds, its breathing shallow again. Ward approached carefully, hands empty. The creature's gaze locked on him once more. This time there was recognition. Understanding. He didn't know why he said it, but the words came out before he could stop them. "We protect our own." The predator's head tilted slightly as though memorizing the sound. Then it sank down, its massive frame resting against the shattered rock, and for the first time, Ward saw something impossible, a flicker of peace in its eyes. They stayed together for 3 nights. Ward and his soldiers built a makeshift camp beside the wounded giant. It watched them in silence as they scavenged wreckage for supplies. It never ate, never slept, just stared at the stars like a sentinel. Sometimes, Ward caught it studying the firelight, as if trying to understand why fragile things gathered around such small warmth. On the second night, a storm swept across the wasteland. The lightning struck so close that it turned sand to glass. The soldiers huddled inside the wreck of a gunship, terrified it would attack in the chaos. Instead, it shielded them. The creature crouched over their shelter, wings arched like a cathedral roof, taking the brunt of the storm's fury. Lightning danced over its scales, lighting the sky in violent arcs. Each strike left it trembling, but it never moved away. When the storm passed, Ward stepped out, staring up at the blackened shape. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. The creature looked down at him. Its reply came not in words, but in a deep rumble that vibrated through the earth, something closer to acknowledgement than sound. By the 3rd day, the rescue signal finally broke through. Dropships descended through the haze, their lights slicing through smoke. The soldiers cheered, crying, shouting into the comms. But Ward felt no relief. Because the predator had risen. It watched the ships land, then turned away, slow and deliberate. It knew this was goodbye. Ward walked toward it, ignoring the protests in his earpiece. "Wait," he called. The creature paused. He reached out, resting his hand against the edge of its scaled arm, warm and rough as volcanic stone. "You'll be hunted again." The predator's eyes narrowed, unreadable. It placed one clawed hand against Ward's chest, a gesture that should have crushed him, but instead felt almost gentle. Ward froze. In that single motion he understood. It wasn't submission. It was respect. Then it was gone, wings slicing through the smoke, vanishing into the blood-colored dawn. Years later, when humanity's first ships joined the Galactic Council, the myths began, whispers of the black-winged protector that haunted the void. No one believed them. Ward never spoke of that day again, not to the Council, not to anyone. But when he saw the signal flare across the holoscreens earlier today, that same energy signature pulsing in Sol's orbit, something in him had known instantly. It had come back. He stood now in the dark of his quarters aboard the diplomatic station, staring out the viewport toward Earth's distant glimmer. His reflection looked older, harder. He could almost feel the echo of that long-ago heartbeat beneath his palm. "Why now?" he whispered. Outside, a faint flash of light cut across the stars. A ship entering the system. Or something larger. Ward's comm buzzed with a message from Earth Command. Just 2 words. "It's here." He exhaled slowly, the ghost of a smile touching his face. Of course it was. And if it had returned to them after all these years, it could only mean one thing. Something worse was coming. The first warning came as a ripple through the orbital grid, a distortion in space so deep it bent sunlight. At first, Earth's sensors thought it was a flare. Then the shadows arrived. Captain Elias Ward watched the data cascade across the holoscreens in the Terran Command Center, his reflection fractured between blue streams of light. Dozens of objects emerging from subspace, each large enough to eclipse a carrier. No identification codes. No known propulsion signatures. Just movement, deliberate and fast. The room hummed with alarm klaxons. Officers shouted into comms, voices cutting through static. Multiple contacts inbound, they're not broadcasting. Ward knew that silence. He'd heard it once before, long ago, when the Predator had fought in the Orion Wars. But this wasn't Kaeldar. This was something else. Put them on the main display, he ordered. The holoscreen shifted, revealing the oncoming fleet. The ships looked wrong, asymmetrical, organic, like tumors of blackened metal fused to bone. Energy pulsed through translucent veins, and each vessel radiated an electromagnetic signature so intense it made the sensors stutter. Admiral Leora turned to him, eyes wide. The Scourge. The name alone was enough to freeze the room. The Scourge were extinction-made flesh, an ancient hive species thought to have been wiped out centuries ago by the combined fleets of a dozen civilizations. They consumed not for territory or vengeance, but for silence. Every planet they touched fell mute. Ward's voice was low. They're not just here for us. They're here for him. Kaeldar? Leora frowned. He nodded. They're afraid of what he protects. The Admiral opened a channel to the Galactic Council. Static filled the air before Chancellor Vrixenel's image appeared, her mandibles tight with irritation. Captain Ward. Explain why we are detecting unauthorized military mobilization around your world. Ward stepped forward. Because a Scourge armada just entered Sol space. We're moving to intercept. Vrixenel's expression didn't change. Impossible. The Scourge are extinct. Tell that to the sky, Ward said. The transmission cut to live feed from orbit. Earth hanging below, serene and blue, while streaks of fire cut through the upper atmosphere. The first wave had already arrived. Vrixenel's composure faltered. We can dispatch observation drones within 6 cycles. Ward turned away. 6 cycles, Chancellor, and there won't be a planet left to observe. He ended the call. Outside, the heavens ignited. Kaeldar appeared without warning, tearing from the void like a phantom of black fire. Its wings flared against the light of the sun, casting vast shadows across the clouds. Every weapon on Earth locked onto it automatically, but Ward shouted into the comms, "Hold fire. That's not the enemy." The Predator dove straight into the Scourge formation. The collision was silent in the vacuum, but the visual impact was apocalyptic. It slammed into the lead vessel, claws rending hulls apart like paper. Shockwaves rippled through the fleet. Explosions lit the darkness like stars being born. Ward stood frozen, watching as Kaeldar fought, not with the chaos of a beast but the precision of a warrior. Every movement deliberate. Every strike protective. He could see, through scattered camera feeds, the creature positioning itself between Earth and the oncoming swarm. Leora whispered, "It's defending us." Ward's throat tightened. It always has. The Scourge retaliated. Spikes of obsidian energy burst from their ships, striking Kaeldar's wings. The creature roared, soundless in space, yet felt across every frequency, and slammed a damaged cruiser into another, detonating both. But there were too many. Ward turned to his officers. "Get every ship in the air." "No. I don't care what the Council says." "Sir, that's a violation of." "Then court-martial me later." Within minutes, the Terran defense fleet launched from Luna base. Frigates, destroyers and carriers surged upward, forming a loose perimeter around the creature. Kaeldar's shadow dwarfed them, but as the human ships opened fire, something remarkable happened. Their targeting patterns matched its strikes, synchronizing unconsciously with its rhythm. They fought as one. Ward joined the command vessel, the Resolute, and watched from the bridge as humanity's fleet and the Predator tore into the swarm together. For the first time, he understood what the Council never could. Kaeldar wasn't humanity's weapon. It was their equal. The Scourge adapted quickly. Smaller drones broke from the main fleet, diving toward the planet's surface. Ward's heart clenched. If they reach atmosphere, they'll see the biosphere, Leora finished grimly. Earth's done. Kaeldar turned, intercepting the swarm mid-descent. Its wings unfolded fully now, immense, blotting out the stars. Energy rippled along its body, gathering at its chest in a blinding pulse. Ward recognized it too late. "Get the fleet clear," he shouted. The creature unleashed the blast. A surge of radiation and raw kinetic force vaporized the drones instantly, but the shockwave tore through human ships as well. Systems overloaded. Alarms screamed. The Resolute spun, hull fracturing under the pressure. Ward was thrown to the deck. He clawed his way upright, staring through the viewport as Kaeldar reeled, its body bleeding luminous fluid into the dark. Yet it still fought, tearing apart the last of the scourge ships, driving them back toward the sun. On the edge of consciousness, Ward activated the distress channel. Council command, this is Captain Ward. The scourge are real. The predators holding the line. If we fall, every world falls next. Static answered him. No help was coming. Kaeldar roared again, a sound of defiance that rattled the hull. The scourge ships, those that remained, began to pull away, retreating toward the solar corona. The creature pursued them, even as plasma scorched its wings and its body broke apart under the heat. Ward pressed a hand against the glass. Don't do this, he whispered. You've already done enough. The creature turned its head slightly, just enough for the cameras to catch one gleaming eye through the blaze. For a heartbeat, man and monster met again, the same unspoken connection that had once saved them both. Then Kaeldar drove the scourge fleet into the sun. The feed went white. The silence that followed was unbearable. Systems flickered. The Resolute hung adrift in low orbit, her crew stunned and wordless. The war had lasted less than an hour, and yet Earth still turned below them, whole. Ward forced himself to breathe. Status of the Predator? Nothing, Leora said softly. No readings. No signal. He's gone. Ward closed his eyes. It shouldn't have hurt, not this much, but it did. For all their weapons and arrogance, humanity had never been capable of the kind of loyalty Kaeldar had shown. He looked out once more at the sun, its surface flaring brighter than usual. He bought us time, he said quietly. That's all he ever does. Behind him, someone whispered, "What now, sir?" Ward didn't answer. The council would come soon, demanding explanations, investigations, punishments. They'd never believe what had really happened. He straightened, voice steady. Now we make sure his sacrifice meant something. Outside, the sunlight rippled strangely, a final wave of energy rolling outward, almost gentle. Ward imagined, just for a second, that he saw a shadow there, winged and watching, before it vanished into the glare. The galaxy would think the Predator was gone. The Council would celebrate its death. But Ward knew better. You don't destroy something that was never born to conquer. You only drive it deeper into the fire. And somewhere beyond that burning horizon, he was certain Kaeldar was still out there, waiting for the next war that dared to threaten humanity. The chamber was colder this time. The air inside the Galactic Council hall hummed with restrained hostility, the kind that needed no words. Elias Ward stood before the assembly once more, older by years that had passed in weeks. His uniform was scorched, his face marked by exhaustion and orbital burns, but he stood straight. Humanity was on trial, and he was its voice. Dozens of species crowded the tiers above, their eyes reflecting the holographic projection hanging in the air between them, the footage of the Scourge invasion. Kaeldar's silhouette, vast and terrible, wrestling with a fleet to save a single blue planet. The Council had paused the recording just before the creature's final dive into the sun. The image hung like a wound in the air. Chancellor Vrixenel presided, her carapace polished to an obsidian gleam. "Captain Ward," she began, her voice sharp as cut glass. "Your unauthorized mobilization of the Terran fleet violated 13 Council security accords. Your refusal to stand down resulted in the destruction of 53 Council observation probes. And yet you claim this act of rebellion saved your world." Ward didn't look away from the hologram. "It saved every world," he said. "The Scourge would have spread if not for him." The chamber erupted in overlapping languages, some vocal, others transmitted directly into the auditory cortex. Words like dangerous, reckless, deviant rose from the noise. Vrixenel's mandibles clicked once. The hall fell silent. "The creature you refer to," she said, "was an apex-level threat. You admit it acted independently, without human command. Yet your fleet fought beside it as if in coordination." Ward folded his hands behind his back. "Because we didn't have to command it. It understood." General Renock rose from the tier opposite him, armor gleaming crimson. "A convenient defense, human. You claim a monster understood your intent while disobeying this council's authority. I call that delusion." Ward looked up at him. "Call it what you like. It fought to protect us while you debated whether we were worth saving." That earned another chorus of outrage. The Chancellor raised one clawed limb for silence, her expression unreadable. "You are dangerously close to contempt, Captain." Ward took a slow breath. "You misunderstand me, Chancellor. I'm not defying the Council. I'm reminding you what it means to be alive." He pointed toward the frozen image of Kaeldar holding back a Scourge cruiser. "You see a monster. I see someone who bled for a species that could never repay it. You fear predators because they remind you of what your kind has forgotten: courage, instinct, loyalty. Vrixenel leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Are you suggesting the council lacks these virtues? Ward's jaw tightened. I'm saying you traded them for safety. The silence afterward felt heavier than gravity. Even the translators hesitated, their circuits uncertain how to render defiance into diplomacy. From the shadows of the observers' gallery, a new voice echoed, soft but clear. Let him speak. It was Counselor Atra of the Velis Collective, one of the few races that had fought the scourge before. Her translucent skin shimmered like water. I have reviewed the transmissions myself, she continued. The predator did not attack indiscriminately. Its actions were precise, defensive. The human is correct. Without intervention, the scourge would have breached the inner colonies. Vrixenel's antennae flared in disapproval. And what if this loyalty is temporary? What if it turns again? Ward turned his gaze toward her. Then you deal with it. But right now, you're condemning the only ally who ever stood between your worlds and annihilation. The Chancellor hesitated. She was no fool, she could hear the weight behind his words. Yet fear was a stronger ruler than logic. The Council cannot condone alliances with entities beyond our control, she said finally. Ward stepped closer to the light, his shadow falling across the chamber floor. Then maybe control isn't what we need. A hush followed. For the first time since the war, someone had spoken against the very foundation of the Council's authority. He didn't stop. You talk about civilization as if it's measured by how much power you hold over others. But civilization isn't safety. It's sacrifice. It's standing between danger and the helpless. That's what he did. That's what we did. Vrixenel's tone softened, almost pitying. You speak of this creature as though it were a soldier. Ward's eyes lifted to the frozen hollow again. It was. For a long moment no one spoke. Then a new sound filled the chamber, a faint electronic pulse. The hologram flickered, the image shifting into static. The technicians scrambled. Vrixenel barked a command to cut the feed, but Ward's eyes went wide. The pulse wasn't interference. It was a signal. A voice crackled through the speakers, distorted, deep but unmistakably alive. Human, still, here. Gasps swept the chamber. Some delegates recoiled. Others leaned forward in disbelief. Ward's heart stopped. The technicians shouted over one another, confirming the source. A transmission from the far side of the solar system. Faint but consistent. The council chamber filled with sound again, not words, but a low rumble that vibrated through the floor. A sound every soldier who'd survived the war could never forget. Kaeldar. Vrixenel stared at the display, her confidence wavering for the first time. Impossible. The solar event destroyed all life within. Ward cut her off. He survived. Another pulse, stronger this time. The translation systems tried to interpret it, resolving fragments of meaning. Safe, humans, protected, waiting. The entire council sat frozen. The galaxy's deadliest predator had spoken, not with rage or vengeance, but with concern. Ward smiled faintly. He's not coming for you. He's making sure we're still alive. Vrixenel's composure shattered for a heartbeat before she caught herself. This changes nothing, she said weakly. We must still consider the implications. Ward took a step back, the faint glimmer of triumph behind his exhaustion. Consider whatever you like. Just remember who stood between you and the void when your walls failed. The Chancellor called for recess, but no one moved. Delegates whispered among themselves, their fear turning to doubt. Ward could see it in their faces, the first cracks in the Council's perfect confidence. As guards escorted him from the chamber, he glanced once more at the flickering signal on the hollow. Each pulse steadied as if sinking to his heartbeat. He knew what it meant. Kaeldar was alive. Watching. Waiting. Outside the chamber, the corridor lights dimmed to evening cycle. Ward paused before the viewport overlooking the stars. Somewhere out there, in the cold dark beyond the reach of politics or fear, a guardian waited in silence. Leora's voice came through his calm, quiet and strained. They'll never admit it, will they? Not yet, Ward said. But they'll remember. And him? Ward looked at the distant sun. He'll come when he's needed. The transmission ended. The corridor fell silent again. Behind him, through the thick walls of the council hall, the faint echo of that pulse continued, slow, steady, unyielding, like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Ward allowed himself one last thought before walking away. They could judge humanity all they wanted. But the universe had already chosen its verdict. The signal grew stronger over the next 30 hours. What began as a faint pulse from deep space evolved into a steady beacon, rhythmic, deliberate, unmistakably intelligent. Across the Galactic Council's territories, comm arrays hummed with the same coded message, one every race could translate but none dared to interpret aloud. He was coming back. Captain Elias Ward stood aboard the Terran flagship Vigilant Dawn, orbiting high above Earth. His reflection stared back at him from the viewport, a man weathered by war, his eyes haunted but alight with something close to hope. Behind him, Leora worked the comm console, her silver hair catching the pale glow of instrument light. "It's him," she said quietly, confirming what he already knew. "The signal is broadcasting from the Kuiper belt. Energy readings are off the charts." Ward's fingers tightened around the railing. He's keeping his distance. Waiting for permission. Leora looked up, incredulous. "Permission? You really think a being that tore through fleets asks permission?" Ward turned. "Not for him. For us." Down below, Earth was wrapped in a lattice of defense satellites, a web of fear disguised as vigilance. The Council had ordered them, insisting humanity exercise restraint until they could determine the Predator's intent. But Ward had seen Kael'thar's intent firsthand. He'd felt it, in every thunderous roar and every act of protection. The door hissed open. General Renock entered, flanked by 2 guards. His armor gleamed even under the dim bridge lights. "Captain Ward," he said, voice clipped. "The Council has issued Directive 19A. All ships are to maintain quarantine. Any contact with the entity is forbidden." Ward didn't turn. "You plan to stop him?" Renock's mandibles flared. "We will defend the system if necessary." Leora muttered under her breath, "You'll defend it right into extinction." Ward raised a hand before she could say more. "General, if he meant harm, there'd be no warning. He's not hiding. He's approaching slowly, like he doesn't want to scare us. Or like a predator stalking prey," Renock snapped. Ward faced him fully now, eyes steady. "Then why announce his presence? Why send a signal we can trace?" The alien had no answer, but pride wouldn't let him yield. "Council orders are absolute. You will not disobey them again." Ward took a step closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "You think I follow orders now because of fear? I follow them when they make sense. When they protect lives. But if you think I'll stand by while you fire on something that saved billions, then you've learned nothing about humans." Renock bristled, but before he could respond, the ship's alarms cut through the tension. Leora's hands flew over the console. Incoming gravitational search. Massive. Object emerging near Neptune. The entire bridge shuddered. Holographic displays filled the air, mapping the anomaly. Space rippled like liquid, bending under the sheer presence of the being breaching the void. And then he appeared. Kael'thar. The screens couldn't contain his full size. The being's body, a cathedral of living armor and luminous veins, drifted into the system like a storm-given flesh. His outer plating glowed with molten patterns, scars from his fall into the star, yet he moved with the slow grace of something ancient and aware. Across the fleet, weapons powered up automatically. The Council's ships aligned into defensive formation, a glimmering wall between Earth and the void. Ward slammed a command into the console. "Stand down. All of you." Renock barked, "Do not listen to him. Prepare to fire on my mark." Leora turned toward Ward, eyes wide. "He's targeting them. He knows they're afraid." Ward's heart pounded. He opened the comm channel directly, his voice trembling but clear. "Kael'thar. It's Ward. You're safe here. Do you understand? You don't need to fight." The lights flickered as a vibration rolled through the ship, not from weapons but from sound. A deep, resonant tone that bypassed language entirely. It wasn't rage. It was sorrow. The Council's fleet opened fire. Beams of plasma and antimatter tore through the dark, slamming into Kael'thar's form. Energy flared against his armor, lighting the void like sunrise. He didn't retaliate at first, he endured. But when a missile detonated near Earth's orbital ring, his eyes ignited like burning stars. Ward's voice roared over the comms. "Cease fire. You'll provoke him." But no one listened. Fear had taken command. Kael'thar turned, and space itself seemed to bend with the motion. His claws unfolded like monolithic wings, his gaze locking onto the fleet. The void howled. Energy rippled across his surface, building toward an explosion that could crack moons. Ward made his choice. He sprinted to the helm, overriding Council encryption. "Leora. Patch me into his frequency." She hesitated only a heartbeat before obeying. You've got 15 seconds before the council severs the link. Ward grabbed the comm, every nerve alive with defiance. Kaeldar, listen to me. The alien's head tilted slightly, a mountain shifting. Ward shouted into the void, his voice shaking the silence. You protected us because you saw something worth saving. Don't prove them right now. Don't become what they fear. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. Kaeldar's energy pulse froze mid-surge. The glow in his armor dimmed to a deep crimson, like embers fading. And then, with a slow, thunderous movement, he turned his gaze away from the fleet, toward Earth. The holograms flared again as data streamed in. His pulse was sinking once more, same as before but now with the planet's magnetic rhythm. A heartbeat matching Earth's. Ward whispered, "He's protecting us again." The Council fleet hesitated, their targeting systems flickering in confusion. Vrixenel's voice came through the broadcast, desperate and thin. "Stand down. All ships stand down." The firing stopped. The stars went quiet. Kaeldar lingered for several minutes, vast and motionless, as if ensuring that peace had truly returned. Then slowly he began to ascend, drifting beyond Neptune's orbit, his form dissolving into light. The bridge of the Vigilant Dawn was silent except for the hum of power relays. Renox stared at the void in disbelief. Why didn't he destroy us? Ward looked out the viewport, voice quiet but certain. Because he's not a weapon. He's a guardian. Leora exhaled shakily, tears glinting under the display lights. Do you think we'll ever see him again? Ward smiled faintly. When we need him most. He turned back toward the stars, a sea of quiet brilliance, endless and alive. Somewhere beyond them, a being once feared across galaxies watched over the fragile world that had offered him something no empire ever had. Trust. On Earth, millions would later see the footage. The moment the deadliest predator in existence had spared them, not out of dominance but devotion. And though the Council would issue statements and treaties, humanity knew the truth. For the first time in galactic history, the universe's apex predator had chosen to stand guard over humankind, not as conqueror but as protector. And in the silence that followed, beneath the endless shimmer of stars, a pulse echoed through the void, strong, steady, eternal. The sound of a promise kept.